This is Jamal back in the Cooper Road mini basement, as we like to call it. We have this 5-speed all apart. We have a standard 5.6 case. This is the latest version of the 4-speed rod change. Exact same case they've used here to build this 5-speed. We can take a look quickly at some of the modifications. Here's what they usually have: is this standard steel pin that supports the shift fork stack in there. You can see on the 5-speed version they've basically welded in a plate here that thickens the floor and adds another one of these similar type of pin, a big heavy steel pin. In this case, if we look inside, we can see with all the linkage now gone, get some better lighting over here, that basically the underside of this, where the 5th gear mechanism was installed, just looks like a large bolt coming through. The threads over here are then held down by a large nut coming through the standard case where they welded on the plate from the outside. The must be a high-spec bolt, probably like a grade 8 type of a hardened shaft bolt, because it is tapped and threaded for the small Allen wrench, or the small Allen screw that used to hold down this little tab that engages 5th gear when it's pinned to the shaft. Here's what we found as we got all the linkage out. Kind of as we suspected, the modification was adding a shim in between reverse and the 3rd, 4th, these little forks that handle the shifting, that engage the brass forks in there. So it's a hardened washer, it looks like here, but essentially not a lot of attention to shimming this to try to make the gates line up intuitively from the shifter, I would say. The reverse piece here, we discovered, has been extended. So I thought, well, I'm just going to change this and go back to a standard one with the rivet and clearance it and make it work. But in fact, this tower here is taller because this now sits lower in the box. One of the changes they make is to create a gap for the 5th gear actuation on the other side. They basically drop the reverse fork a little ways down, add this spacer, and then the 3rd, 4th, then there's a small spacer or washer between the 3rd, 4th, and the 1st, 2nd, which is on the very top. So what we're hoping to do is we're going to clean this box up, then we're going to carefully reassemble this linkage, and as we do it, we'll try to maybe add some shims here to space these forks in a way that brings the gates into better alignment. When I say gates, I'm talking about, when your shifter's going 1st, 2nd, that's a gate, 3rd, 4th is a gate, 5th is a gate, and reverse is a gate. In this case, certainly is not a straight back drag from 5th into reverse, the way they've done this. You can see on the standard rod change over here, have a quick look at the way the linkage works. You can see not great lighting, but you can kind of see the split collar in here that I was talking about, where the new piece machines a full collar around that sleeve here with the dual lugs that come out. You can see those ears on there. Those dual lugs engage the extra shift fork for 5th on this side, and to make all of that work is the reason they had to kind of reshim this plate over here, create a gap. If we can make this one work a little bit, you can see, the 1st, 2nd gate right into the 3rd, 4th gate, and then right into the reverse gate. That's the way they're supposed to work, and when they do the 5th, they sort of cobble it up, in my view. You got to do something to add an extra gate in there, but some attention could have been paid to making it work better, in my opinion. This is a good time to take a look at some of these modifications. Some pretty fancy welding in here. They must have this box extremely clean. Aluminum does not like to weld like this. If you have any oil in cavities or cracks in the casting, voids, whatever. So pretty tricky to make all this stuff line up. That end there is a large block welded in, which then is bored precisely for the now splined lay shaft. So that bearing fully supports the lay shaft, rotates of course driven by the main shaft. But rather than just having the gear rotate on a stationary shaft on roller bearings, it's now a splined arrangement. You get splines all the way through the A plus gear here, and so it has to turn the shaft, so it rides in some big beefy bearings. The casting sure gets thin. When you look over here, you get your main third motion bearing, and then over here now the big lay gear bearing. And not a lot of meat over here, but again, some pretty fancy welding to add this block in, and then machined it precisely so that the bearings all operate in linear fashion rather than having a twist. Same kind of deal up here, a big lump welded in. You can kind of see it. Again, pretty fancy welding, because then they had to come back and remachine this bore for the first motion bearing to make it all work, being careful not to distort or interfere with. This surface here, this is of course the critical idler gear thrust surface, and wow, that weld is fairly untouched and just clears. Very nice job there on the welding, no doubt about it. What else can we have a look at while we're in here? Other than that, it's, you know, the way the reverse works. Everything's pretty normal with the ability to use the standard case. Unlike, you know, we've talked about it before, the Jack Knight, the proper Jack Knight 5-speeds. They were their own casting. This is just a DAM 5626 with a bunch of extra welding and modifications. Anyway, we'll see if we can take this collection of bits and see what we can do to make it all work to where it shifts smoothly, and then nobody will really care about the contents and how ugly or how nice they look if we can make it all work the way it's supposed to and provide that extra fifth gear that we all crave.